Coming up next on the CHGO Cubs podcast, it's a Monday Madrigal morning, the end of the Nick Madrigal era and the Mike Tauchman era, the summer of Mike Tauchman. It's fading into a cold, dark winter. Are the Cubs cutting money or building a winner? The #1 Cubs podcast in North America starts right now. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs podcast. It is Monday, November 25th. Thanksgiving is almost here. We have roster moves to talk about, maybe some cutting of cash on the north side. We'll see what we say. Luke Stuckmeyer, Brian Herrera, Jared Wyllys in the building today.
J-Dub.
You know the holidays are almost here. Cody Delmendo off a hot weekend of prize picks and Law on the Draw, running the ones and twos. Can't hear him today. It's the way we like him.
And Circa.
And Circa, of course. Of course.
All I have is being a degenerate gambler. That's all I have.
Law on the Draw made the thumbnail for today's podcast. Have we ever had a sexier one? More skin? Have we ever had more skin on a thumbnail for a CHGO Cubs podcast?
We need Luke Stuckmeyer in shorts on a thumbnail one day.
Well, what if you took a shot of me and then photoshopped my chicken legs and shorts onto Mike Tauchman's half-naked body at the ballpark? Then he would just look naked.
A lot of skin there.
That'd be a hell of a Photoshop. I'd give a lot of credit to Law if he did that.
That would be, what do they call it? Not safe for work for a lot of people. For a lot of people. Yes, the summer of Mike Tauchman is over. Jay says the summer of Mike Tauchman is by far the most popular shirt that he wears, gets positive feedback on. He will be missed. And, of course, the guy who started the whole thing is right over there. Well, a drunken version of him.
Sorry for the loud sneeze right there, by the way.
My favorite part of the Mike Tauchman era is the fact that the summer of Mike Tauchman bit took off because of a drunk tweet I sent on a random day in June.
Well, the day that the Cubs official account used that phrase, I was like, this is serious.
That was a cool thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember
Cole was on Marquee.
When Cole Wright used it on Marquee post game after the catch in St. Louis. That was fun. Yeah. I mean, I sent a tweet over the weekend about the bit, and it's like the whole point of the bit is that he is a quote unquote Cubs legend that we will reference for years to come.
He'll be one of those random Cubs.
And it will it will measure just how deep in the trenches you are with this organization, like how big of a fan you are. If you mention Mike Tauchman in 10 years, if you mention Mike Tauchman to a fan and they don't know who that is,
then you'll know.
Then you'll know that they're not that deep in the trenches.
They're not a real fan, is what I'm saying.
Not to say they're not a real fan, but it's like, you're casual.
Right.
You know?
Right. You're not as devoted as you could be. Because I said it before we started, but if I'm at Wrigley in 5 or 10 years and I see a Mike Tauchman jersey on somebody, I'm giving that guy a high five.
Yeah.
Hey, he had some great moments.
He did.
And that's the thing, too, is that he was a good player.
If you take the last 2 years, right, which were horribly disappointing, are not two of the best moments easily in the top 5 Mike Tauchman moments?
Yeah, the catch in St.
Louis, the walk-off against the White Sox.
The walk-off against the Cardinals, too.
The Cardinals this year.
He's probably got 3 of your top 5 moments.
Of the last 2-3 seasons.
2-3 seasons.
He had a huge moment against Milwaukee last year, too, in 23 at least. Like a 9th-inning comeback win, I think they had.
I don't think this is the reason it's happening. It looks like it's a money drop and trying to create some space in the outfield. But I sure hope there's not anybody out there that thinks this is blaming Mike Tauchman for anything that's happened the last few years. He did everything and more than he was expected to do.
Absolutely.
Right? Like he was. If when you look back at him, you're going to say he was a good Cub.
Yeah, because especially the circumstances that he was called up under, it was purely Cody Bellinger's hurt.
Yeah,
we need another outfielder. Nobody's expectations were very high at all. It was really just, we need you to kind of fill in as a backup for this time period. And then he cemented himself to the point that like he didn't get sent back down. I mean, that by itself is a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, and he had just come from Korea too. Like he had played 2022 in Korea.
It's the whole process of them non-tendering him. The only thing that bothers me, and I'm still annoyed by it, is the fact that you could have moved him in July of last season. That you could have moved him, and I know that you probably wouldn't have got anything of real significance, but it would have allowed you to give another young guy an opportunity or something. Like I know that there's two different ways of looking at that. That's kind of like the Cubs giving up on the season. Do you want them to give up on the season at the end of July? That's the only like argument I push back. That's my argument.
But the season
push back on is just that
it was over.
But it wasn't to them. Like Luke, you were out in June.
I was out in June, and I was right.
Sure, but I'm like they were. I mean, at the end of July, they were how many games out? Like, was it like? Because had the Cleveland sweep happened yet? The sweep.
No, they got hot in August.
Yeah,
and got themselves to within 3 games.
Whatever it was, like they, obviously winning or making the postseason was a real goal last year. They weren't gonna start. They shouldn't, unless they were in a worse position. Like, okay, if they're gonna sell, or if they're in a position to sell, then do it. But if your goal is to make the postseason and you have a chance still, like you shouldn't. To me, you shouldn't be trading your major league contributors.
I think we were all pretty surprised with the lack of movement of really outside of the Paredes trade. They traded Leiter Jr. We did our rankings of who would get moved, and the only person that got moved that we thought would get moved was Leiter. Yeah. Again, it has nothing to do with Mike Tauchman, but to me, it's kind of like, how the Bears guys talk about, or just football people talk about, like paying attention to detail. Like to me, this is the front office not paying attention to detail, because even if they were in it, or even if they were a little bit further out, whatever. The thing is at that point, PCA was playing every day. They're going to play PCA every day. You're going to play Ian Happ in left field every day. You're playing Bellinger in right field. And then Say was playing he was doing DH. Maybe not at that point, but he was on his way to doing that, considering how bad he had been defensively. I just think that there was just no real room for him to even play. So I'm not even asking for a major prospect to come up and take a spot. It's just more about the fact that you had too many outfielders. And you could have just, again, I know you probably don't get a ton for him or anything, but he was a valuable piece that a playoff team could have really used. Even if it's a low-A player, I don't care.
Roll the dice on somebody.
That was an opportunity to me, because we know how teams get desperate at the end of July sometimes. Again, you're not going to get a major prospect for him, but just to get something. It's the only thing about it that bothers me.
Rewind, I was thinking about it in 2020. Like I was thinking trading him. When you said trade Tauchman, I was thinking for whatever reason 2023. Like this year they were more in sell mode. Maybe they should have. I was thinking about it in terms of 2023. They shouldn't have traded him. Obviously this year they were in a different position.
By the trade deadline this year, it seemed much more clear that to your point.
I had my years mixed up,
which is understandable because they feel like the same season.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I know it's like one just long extended.
It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it doesn't feel like he's going to be coming back to the Cubs. Like, why would he come back with knowing like how it flooded with outfielders they have, plus young guys that they really like?
Right.
Like, he is going to find himself either on a playoff contender in a bench role, fourth outfielder role, and I won't be surprised if he's productive for them, or he's going to go to like the White Sox and they'll flip him at the deadline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds like something that it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. The point is, because the picture was pretty clear that the at-bats weren't going to be there for him by that point. So what's the benefit of holding on to him when you could at least flip him and roll the dice, like see what you can get in exchange for him? And it does feel a little bit like a missed opportunity, especially now that it's November and now you just non-tender the guy and you get nothing.
Yeah, what was he going to make? Like 2.9 was his projected arbitration was 2.9.
Yeah.
So
it's not even about money. This isn't like, we're
2.3.
Right.
Okay. Whatever it was. I mean, it's like, I understand the I mean, I thought, and I sat there and I said, Mike Tauchman does still have a role on this team next year. At least to start it. Like, if they were to keep him around and keep him as their 4th, 5th outfielder, like, he's a good left-handed bat. He's a good clubhouse presence. He's pretty reliable in the role he's asked to play. Like, I thought Mike Tauchman could still serve a purpose for this team next year, but obviously they went the other way, and that doesn't shock me. It's just like, when you look at it, it's like, okay, I understand not wanting to spend, was it $2.3 million, whatever it is, whatever it would have been, on a guy who's going to be your 5th outfielder with 2-3 other prospects already. Like, Canario's already debuted. Alcantara's already debuted. Casey's probably going to debut at some point this year. Like, I understand not having – I understand why, even though it's just like the Cubs shouldn't be worried about $2.3 million, I get also why it's like, you don't need it. You can – if as long as they use the resources in a different way and not just try to save money – then, it's obviously reasonable, but that comes with using that money you save with Tauchman in other ways.
If it's an extra $1 million, you can give Soto.
To close it out so no one is confused.
Correct.
I'm not upset that they non-tendered him this weekend. I'm upset that they didn't move him before the trade deadline.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity in my eyes. I'm not upset that he's gone. He was a fun guy to have, Cubs legend, Cub for life. And one day, hopefully, he's throwing out a first pitch once a year, whatever. But it's a missed opportunity to not trade him at the deadline.
Listen, if you're going to spend your life looking to around the margins and trying to exceed projections, then you better take advantage of every little tiny thing that might someday make your team better, is what Cody's saying.
Yeah.
I totally agree with what Gary's saying. Like, he does remind me of Reed Johnson, a good player. He was the 4th, 5th outfielder.
Fun to watch, yeah,
fun to watch, nice guy,
Chicago
all of those
guy.
things. Yeah. Gary says, I don't remember people having this reaction. Well, CHGO wasn't around. Twitter wasn't around. All those things didn't really exist back then. Now we are, and all we're saying is, if the Cubs are going to act like a mid-market team, which they seem to be, then they better start taking advantages of small opportunities like this one and accepting the fact when you're not a playoff team and saying, all right, I might get a single-A player who will never reach the big leagues, but I might be able to get a guy who ends up being a reliever that ends up helping me 3 years down the road, and all I gave up was a half a season of Tauchman who wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
That's all you're saying.
Yes.
It's a tiny move that you got to make if you're going to act like a mid-market team, which you are.
Yeah. And that's the important thing, because I think the fan frustration comes from the fact that we recognize this is the way the team is operating. They don't like it. They don't agree with it, because it's hard to justify that against being in a market as big as Chicago, being the Cubs, and having the revenue streams that they do. It's really hard to look at all of that and make that make sense with, well, why do you operate like you're the Kansas City Royals or something? Mm-hmm. But you're right. If that's what they're going to do, then you can't afford to sit on your hands with things like, it's the trade deadline, you've got Mike Tauchman, and maybe you just get some kind of low-level prospect who might turn into nothing, but might also give you some benefit down the road. Yeah, it's looking at the details. This is an opportunity that could have been there. They didn't take advantage of it. And, no one, grand scheme of things, no one is sad. We're not like mourning Mike Tauchman being gone. It's really just like, you could have taken better advantage of this opportunity and just didn't.
That's the Madrigal segment, which is coming up in a couple minutes. When you go back and look at the numbers that they're talking about, guys that are gone or were non-tendered or DFA'd, Almonte, Bethancourt, Tauchman, Wisdom, ALLCITY, Wingenter, yada, yada, yada. None of the names jump out at you and you're like, okay, wow, that's going to devastate. No, those are all names you would have guessed. For me, if I had to really say one that, I guess because of the injury, ALLCITY is not the one that surprised me. Almonte is a guy I thought might be back just because they're
You also
He's
didn't
part
have
of a
Brennan
major
Davis on that
trade.
list.
Brennan Davis.
Brennan Davis is there too.
Brennan Davis.
Yeah, Almonte was
But
just
major league money.
and he was a part of a significant trade less than a year ago. I mean, there was never any real opportunity to know what you had in that player, but now he's gone. So that one is a little bit surprising that they didn't at least take another year on. Let's see what Almonte.
I'm curious to when is he supposed to come back and play?
Right.
If that has something to do with it that we just don't know, fine. But a lot of people talk about the Bush trade and just talk about Bush and forget that Almonte was part of the trade. And before he got hurt, he was really productive.
Right.
So it's like, we'll see. We'll see.
We will. And we're going to talk about Nick Madrigal, which actually probably a lot of fans, I'm guessing, are a little more excited about the Cubs moving on from. I know a few in particular.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any names. But first, did you know that ComEd can help businesses save money by becoming more energy efficient?
Luke, I honestly did not know that until right now.
I know. I bet Jared didn't know either. But the
idea.
energy efficiency program can help find up to 35% in energy savings.
35%? What does a business have to do to get that?
All they have to do is sign up for that free facility assessment at comed.com/biz.
Okay, that sounds super easy. Why aren't more businesses doing it?
Probably just forgot the website.
Yeah, maybe. ComEd.com/biz. ComEd.com/biz. ComEd.com/biz.
That should do it, Ryan.
You're
Terms
right,
and conditions apply. Offers are subject to change. Actual savings will vary by customers' energy usage and rate. The ComEd Energy Efficiency Program is funded in compliance with state law.
Prize Picks, guys. It's the best place to get real money on sports action. If you didn't know, I knew, but I'm letting y'all know. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes.
Wow.
Less than a half hour. That's awesome, all right? They now offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season as well. You sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You play $5, get $50, and you can throw some players in your lineup tonight for Monday Night Football. We got NBA, college basketball. There's player props for that too. I mean, there's so much to choose from, right? They offer weekly promotions, like Taco Tuesday is one as well, where you can get discounts on select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today. Use code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. J.K. Dobbins, more than 46.5 yards rushing tonight. Revenge game against Baltimore. Let's go. That's one for your lineup.
Nick Madrigal. Moment of silence. Everybody pause for it.
All right.
Wow, that was a tough. I mean, that trade's looking tough.
Yeah.
Is it looking tough?
No, not really. Barb, I know, is always upset. It's a nothing trade. It was a nothing trade for nothing.
On it is completely...
The hard part is that the key piece, in my eyes, was the reliever that got hurt.
Well, no, the key piece was Nick Madrigal.
It wasn't in my eyes. It wasn't
what,
for
when you
Herb
made
and
the
White.
trade?
When they made the trade, the Sox guys were all like, "Oh yeah, Cody Hoyer might be something." I feel bad. There were no Sox fans that I talked to that were like, "We gave up Madrigal." They'd already decided that Hoyer was the better player. Now it turned out Nether really had an impact. I don't know. I don't know what the Cubs viewed as the bigger piece. Right, a guy that was the 4th pick in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Madrigal. I mean, he was hitting well with the Sox. I mean, it was like limited sample size, obviously.
It was, but Hoyer was looked at as a possible closer.
When they traded for him, Madrigal had torn his hamstring or whatever it was, right?
Yeah. At the time, it was Cody Hoyer that I was most looking forward to because I thought I was looking at him as a potential closer. And Madrigal too. I mean, because before he had hurt his hamstring, you looked at the numbers he put up in the minors with the White Sox and some of those really early returns when he got to the major leagues. It did look like a guy who could, maybe not an all-star necessarily, but like if you're looking for a solid second baseman, I thought he really could be that. And so I liked the Madrigal part of it too. But yeah, it was definitely Cody Hoyer that I had really high expectations for.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like Luke said, I mean, it's a trade that didn't work out. I think the tough part is that Craig Kimbrell was having such a good year when they traded him, that he was a top reliever at the deadline, and they didn't. The tough part is obviously they didn't ultimately turn that into anything because Cody Hoyer got hurt, Nick Madrigal hasn't stayed healthy, and obviously now he's non-tendered, so he didn't stay healthy, didn't really play very well when he was healthy, except for like a month in 2023, maybe he had a really good stretch. And then, but outside of that, I mean, he had, even before 2024, he had like a low back strain, 2 strains in the same hamstring, I believe, that he tore, and like a left and right groin strain. And then obviously this year, I mean, he was healthy the year, but he just wasn't playing well, and then got optioned and got hit on the hand the first game he was in Iowa. So, like, I think the tough part comes from the fact that what you got back, your return for Craig Kimbrell didn't turn into really solid major league contributors. And, you know, Madrigal just, he didn't stay healthy. He wasn't able to be on the field. He played 92 games in 2023 maybe, and that was the most he played for the Cubs in 3 years.
Yeah.
He never hit better than 263, I think it was, in any of those years. So, I mean, this was like the expectation that he would be non-tendered. Like, to pay him, it was $1.5 million or whatever that would have been. Maybe it was $2 million. It just wasn't like the Cubs probably couldn't justify paying him that, because they have, I mean, Ben Cowles on the 40-man, Miles Mastrobuoni's still here, Matt Shaw and James Triantos are right there. It's just there was no room for him on the roster anymore.
For me, it's kind of going with what Ryan's saying. It's like to not get a better return for Craig Kimbrell at the deadline in 21. And if I remember correctly, the trade was made like in the last half hour before the deadline was up. It was almost like Jed was kind of rushed at the end, or maybe he had a better opportunity earlier that day or before the deadline. And it was almost like, well, we got to get something for him now, and I missed the opportunity. That's kind of how it felt. I don't know. I'm not in the front office, so I'm just, spitballing. But for me, that's the biggest thing, is the fact that you didn't get more for what was considered the best reliever at the deadline, I think. I think you can make that argument.
I think so, for sure.
Pointing out, and it's totally true, like his daughter was sick and being treated at Northwestern, so the Cubs did factor that into the decision. But the point is, they thought they were getting a pretty good return.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the Cubs thought, oh, we did this solid for Kimbrell and his family, and we didn't get anything back. They thought they were getting back a closer and potentially a guy that was the piece that was missing, like the type of guy that had been missing from their team. Someone that was going to,
bat the ball skills.
Bat the ball. He wasn't going to strike out as much. He was going to get on base. They saw 2 guys that they thought were going to be pieces of the future, and it turns out neither. Now, Hoyer is an injury problem, but in reality, there are few things that are more valuable than a closer who's pitching well at the trade deadline. And in this case, with his daughter sick or not, they thought they were getting a good deal, and they didn't.
Yeah. And at the time, it made a lot of sense to swap Kimbrell to get somebody like Cody Hoyer in return, because when you're not a playoff team, what's the use of a top-tier closer? That's not something that you really need in the short term. So at the time, to flip him for somebody that you thought could develop into your closer in a few years, when hopefully you are a playoff contender, in the moment, it made a lot of sense, and it did look like a trade that was good for both sides. I remember at the time thinking, this is going to help the White Sox on a playoff run in their season, and it's going to help the Cubs in the future, which is what they need right now. Mm-hmm. I really liked the deal at the time.
And it didn't work out. And I think that's like what you're saying, Luke, is, it wasn't like a just thrown together trade last minute to get something in return for Craig Kimbrell. Like, obviously, with the stuff with his daughter, like, influenced where you traded him, right? Yeah. But they didn't go into it saying, Sox, just give us pennies on the dollar. We're doing this for, like, that was part of it. But it was also like you said, they thought they were getting major league contributors for the future, or like
it looked like a deal, a good deal.
It did at the time for sure. And in hindsight, obviously it didn't work out, but at the time, you're like, this is a pretty good deal for the Cubs, even though Nick Madrigal is recovering from a hamstring tear.
I'm not saying that
Sox fans are mad about it.
I'm not saying that they did the deal with the White Sox because it was the last resort or whatever, or they missed. I guess in some ways, the way I worded it, I said that. I wasn't trying to say that. I'm just saying that, like, to me, in the moment, it felt underwhelming. I felt like you could have got more. That's how I felt in the moment. But I also didn't hate the trade. It's kind of how I feel about the trade for Eli Morgan last week. Like, I didn't hate it, but the scouts and the prospect people are telling me that he has a really high upside. So that's what the Guardians are banking on. It's not apples and oranges. It's not black and white. Like, it could be completely different. But to me, I did feel underwhelmed because it was like this is what you got for what was considered the best reliever on the market. And even if Kimbrel would have gone on and helped the White Sox, I don't know, win more playoff games or something, I probably wouldn't think any different than I do now, because the Cubs have made the decision. They were selling the entire team that deadline. As much as I don't want to talk about that ever again, but they did get the haul they got back. It did make sense at the time. Outside of the fact that it's almost like they thought Madrigal could be what Horner became. And instead the opposite happened, and Horner became what Horner has become, and Madrigal just never lived up, whether it's injuries or not. I mean, he came into last season healthy. And to his credit, I'll give him credit for this. As much as I was very, 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 very frustrated during his entire era with the Cubs, he did learn how to play third base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Luke, you sat here and made jokes about him not being able to throw it past the pitcher's mound for an entire offseason. Okay.
He did.
And he did learn how to play third base.
I gave him credit.
You did. And would I say it was elite? No, but he did what the team asked him to do given the circumstances after they signed Swan.
He did it better than
I will
Morel
give
did.
him credit for that. But the offense just never showed up. And the offense that White Sox fans said a lot that bothered them and made them question if he could be someone one day, it happened with the Cubs. He didn't walk. He walked below 5% of the time, well below 5% of the time. And even though he didn't strike out, it's not like he made great contact out of the time. It was death, taxes, ground balls to second base for Nick Madrigal. All right. So it's like, the offense is really what bothered me the most about Madrigal never working out. I thought he was a good dude. He did whatever the team asked him when it came to defense. He learned how to play a new position, but the offense just was never there. And and I said this all the time whenever we would argue about if he should play more or not, the fact that he hasn't hit over 300 with the Cubs ever, and he doesn't walk at all. There was just not a lot of value there. Just not a lot of value. He was a singles hitter at best.
And once you decided to trade him to the White Sox, and you look back on it in hindsight now, what other players would you have wanted in return? I'm not saying Madrigal was the overall choice. For me, it was Hoyer, because I looked at Hoyer pitch on the White Sox a couple times and thought, that guy could be a closer. And he started off that way. Even with the Cubs, you looked at him and thought, there's potential there, and then he got hurt. But who else was they weren't going to, was Crochet even there at the time?
He was... He
was injured.
Did he take? He was on Tommy John. Did he have Tommy John?
He played in. But I'm gonna
guess
right?
that wasn't even an option. They weren't going to give you Crochet for Kimbrel. So they were giving you a guy that had pitched in the majors, Cody Hoyer, and looked like he could be a closer someday, and a guy that had hit. You had two major league players for Kimbrel, who in my eyes, I think people overvalued. Is he career-wise, is he a great closer? Yes. Don't forget, he had some horrible moments with the Cubs, and it was like they found lightning in a bottle, traded him off to the White Sox, and got something. The return didn't work out. Injuries, and the other player, Madrigal, just never developed into being worthy of the number 4 pick. But the number 4 pick isn't the Cubs' fault. That's the White Sox fault.
And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Mike Tauchman, where that's an example of a time when they had an opportunity, they took it. It didn't necessarily work out, but that's a part of what's going to happen. Like, you kind of have to take that risk sometimes, where I'm going to send you this closer, and I'm hoping what I'm getting in return is something that's going to benefit us in the long term. But yeah, you always have to live with the possibility that it's just not going to. And that's where, we get frustrated when a team we don't feel like is doing enough. But then on the other side of that is when they do make trades that don't quite work out, you have to accept that as a part of it as well, because you can't nail it every time. Nobody does. No team has a perfect track record with trades. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in like the trades that didn't work out and the times that, all that sort of thing. But they've got plenty of moves that have gone the other way as well.
Sure. I would say as far as winning or losing the trade, I just think it's more of like a wash.
Yeah,
we sat here and have made
the argument. Didn't work out for the White Sox either. Yeah.
We've sat here and made the argument that the Cease-Quintana trade, and Eloy trade, whatever, is a wash now. But you can legitimately say that this one's a wash, because not only did the White Sox use Kimbrel the wrong way, because I remember the whole, like, it was like a talked about thing.
He was their 8th inning.
He was the 8th inning guy. They let Liam Hendricks be the closer, which, I mean, whatever. But it was like a very long trend of anytime Kimbrel didn't pitch in the 9th inning or in a save situation, he would blow up. And so, and that's what happened. He was not good because that's how they kind of used him. They won one playoff game with him there. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, it just feels like both teams lost.
Yeah.
So,
all right, going to take a quick break. We're going to also talk about Cody Bellinger. Is Belly on the block? Is he on the trade block? We'll talk about it next. First, our great sponsors.
Luke, let me tell you, we are sponsored by Chicago Sports Network, the new home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core, and they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch Bulls, Hawks, and Sox games all season long.
Beautiful. You know, I was just thinking the other day, I got to get some new flooring. Got to get some new flooring in the house, upgrade things. And you know where you're going to want to do that? Our friends at Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get to shop at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get your new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but they can't be beaten on quality, service, speed, and competitors then just try and advertise low-quality products. Empire's not going to carry that garbage. Empire is not going to promise you the lowest prices because people that do that are putting stuff on your floors that they wouldn't put in their own home. In fact, by the way, you want to go to the big box store and look for your flooring? That's a gamble. Let me tell you, that's a gamble. Mm-hmm. You might be talking to somebody that was working in plumbing yesterday, or you could be talking to the guy that was working in lumber the day before, or the garden center the day before that. You want to trust your floors to that person?
Absolutely not.
Go ahead. It's risky business. Riskier than baseball trades, let me tell you. And they also have the virtual floor designer, a great way to see how your new floors are going to look in any space. Just snap a picture, instantly see how the new floors will look in your room, and they also service their own warranty. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. $350 off. Oh.
Can't beat that. Cannot beat that.
Can't beat it.
That's the Godfather. The Godfather did that.
Godfather did it. Yeah.
The least I could have is nice floors. If the Cubs aren't going to give me what I want, nice flooring is what I need.
Yeah.
You can control what you can control, you know? Get yourself some good floors.
So we've been talking about the DFA'd guys, the non-tendered guys, the lists of, $2 million here, $1 million here, $1 million here, 1.3 here, 2.3 here, 2.93. It all adds up to just a smaller amount of money that's never going to equal Juan Soto, obviously. What Ryan hinted at is, will you start to take the roughly $3 million from Tauchman and use 1.5 of that to now bump that up for a contract for another reliever?
Right.
Like, we take 1.5 and say, all right, we need another reliever because we can take a minor league guy and fill that spot cheaper than $3 million for Mike Tauchman. So it's the moving of the chess pieces. Another one that's been discussed, Bob Nightingale says the Cubs are shopping him. And we mentioned it. This goes back to when we were talking about would he stay or would he go? Bellinger. And then I asked the question. I started asking around. I asked Cap. I asked baseball people, why can't they just trade him if he stays? If they're so worried, because it sounded like Jed Hoyer in that end of season press conference, it sounded like Jed was saying, oh, Cody, you better test that market. You're going to make so much money. You had such a great season. And sure enough, it sounds like the Cubs are maybe, it's not that they're disappointed in the player. They just don't want to pay that amount of money for the production when they might have young players that can do it much cheaper.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the idea of trying to trade Bellinger? I just think it's a pipe dream because I don't think anybody's going to take that deal when he could opt into it again next year.
I think, well, yes, I agree with you. Like, he's guaranteed $32.5 million right now. He's got the opt-in as a part of his contract. So, like, it's going to be hard to trade that and get, like, you're not going to be able to trade it for similar value. Like, you'd have to go under whatever you value Bellinger. You're probably not going to make up that value in whatever you trade for. The problem with, if you do trade him, is the same thing kind of what I said with Tauchman. That's, as you pointed out, like, you have to make sure you take that money that you save on Bellinger and use it to improve the team. And there's no guarantee the Cubs do that, right? Like if they were to trade Cody Bellinger, it'd save them at least $32.5 million, if not 50 or something, or 60, whatever is left on his deal. But the point of doing that is to then be able to use those resources separately in a different way to improve your team. And if the Cubs won't do that, if that happens and the Cubs wouldn't do that, then it just becomes a salary dump, which is not what the Chicago Cubs should be doing. Like, if you're going to make this trade, because Cody Bellinger is a good player, we know that. We know that he fits this team well. He provides the versatility. We've seen what he can be at, like, closer to his best, right? 2023 was a good year for him. And I guess the hope now is that if he's still with the team, he can get back there. We know who he is. He means something to this team. But if you're trading him, it has to be because you're trading him with ideas of being able to use that money in separate ways, right? Like, because had he opted out, like, I mean, if you're able to trade him right now, in a way, it's like if you got like a mid-tier prospect for him, that's basically like him opting out, but you also got a mid-tier prospect for him, right? So I guess you may have to also pay some money for it, like whatever. But if he had opted out, the Cubs would have had to then take that savings that they get on Bellinger and use it to improve the team. Same way with trading him. If you're going to trade him and get all that money off the books, you have to, and you don't make up the value in a trade. Whatever you get back for it, you have to take that money that you saved on him and use it to improve the team. You can't just sit on it. Otherwise, it's a salary dump, and that's not what the Cubs should be.
I think there's a couple of reasons why I think trading Bellinger doesn't make sense. One is because, like we've talked about already, the financial aspect of it is going to make working out a deal pretty tricky, because you're either convincing a team to it's a salary dump so that you're going to convince somebody else to pay him that money, or you're going to trade him and end up eating some of that yourself, which doesn't really help you. So there's that side of it. But to me, it also doesn't make sense to trade him, because what's the direction that the team is supposed to be taking right now? You've had back-to-back 83-win seasons. You've come this close to getting a playoff spot in 2023, a little farther away this year. But what's the direction the team is supposed to take? You should be working to get better so that we don't have another 83-win season or 80-win season or whatever they're setting up to have. So if you trade Cody Bellinger, is that really going to make you better in 2025? I don't think that it does. Honestly, I think you're better off keeping him, because what's the one thing you want to see get better on this team right now? To me, it's the offense. You have to be able to score runs. And does Cody Bellinger help you do that when he's healthy and when he's hitting at all like the Cody Bellinger that he's capable of being? Then 100%
Absolutely,
yes. And he's a left-handed bat. So I don't get it. Because unless you are, we're like perpetual rebuild mode or whatever it is that's happening. It's not the right direction.
The only way I see it, Cody, this is the only, you're going to say your piece. The only way I could see it making sense.
Like, he's coming.
I know. The only way I can see it making sense is if you can take whatever's left on Bellinger's deal. I don't know what the number was. It 60 million, something like that, for the next two seasons. Like if he were to opt in, if you can find a team that's got the same amount and they need him and you need the player that's making that on another team, like, okay, fine. You need a closer that's making this. If somebody wants to somehow miraculously match up those two things, fine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Fine, because you would have another outfielder. If you have a bigger need somewhere else for that same type of contract. But if you're doing it just to shed the money, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it is, because you're going to go from 83 wins to 73.
Okay. So
there you go.
This is going off what Luke was just said, and that makes me mad because I wanted to be the first one to say.
You sat up. It was like the like when you lock in.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
I stole his thunder. I didn't mean to steal his thunder. I didn't know he was thinking that. Cody and I sometimes our wavelengths go back and forth.
Great minds think alike. I have a lot of thoughts related to this, but Luke, like he brought up the idea of basically salary flops, like flipping salaries.
Flipping.
The Diamondbacks make so much sense with this because they have Jordan Montgomery. Their owner has openly said that was a mistake.
Okay.
And listen, Montgomery was terrible for the Diamondbacks, but – we've seen Chase Field play the way that Chase Field plays. It's chaos there. I'm not saying that I support this. I'm just saying it's an option that I would get on board for because the Cubs need another pitcher. Montgomery is a prime bounce back guy. He like a lot of people give or say that he struggled this year because he didn't have a full spring training, right? He didn't sign till like a week or two before the season. So if you're going to do something like what Luke just said, taking Bellinger's salary and flipping him for like a pitcher, which is what the Cubs need, fine. But if that's not the case, I swear to God, if we are sitting here on opening day and Cody Bellinger is out of here and you didn't go and find someone to take that spot that is proven, then if you're mad at me for being as negative as I've been the last 4 months, buckle up, buddy, because it's going to be even worse because it's an absolute joke. An absolute joke if you're going to just trade Bellinger just to get the salary off. That's it. If this is just to open up a spot for Owen Casey to play every day, to go through the ups and downs of Owen Casey, which he could pan out. It could be great. And you know what? I'd give the Cubs all the credit. But the Chicago Cubs are not an organization that should be banking on that, especially in a year where you're supposed to win. There is no more patience from this fan base to be going through the developmental ups and downs with certain guys, dude. It just not. If this was 3 years ago, okay. All right. But we're talking about going into 2025. It's been 4 years of this rebuild I was told wasn't a rebuild, right? Bellinger, I understand fans why they want to move him. He was underwhelming last year. Do I think he can be more like 2023 Bellinger in 25? Maybe, if the stars align. I think you can find a middle ground, though. If the front office is going to blame the weather on the offense not being good, whatever. Hopefully the wind blows out a little bit more. Do we need to get some giant fans and put them on the lights? I don't know. I said that to someone on Twitter the other day. Shout out Scott from Iowa. Like, what do we got to do to get the balls to fly out? I'm tired of warning track fly balls, right? That was a very meatball thing of me to say.
Maybe the Friday 120 club sits behind home plate and just goes...
Right, just move your seats.
Yeah, we'll move to behind home plate.
Behind home plate and we'll just blow hot air.
I get the reasoning of why you would want to move Bellinger. You got Alcantara, you got Casey. They're top 100 prospects. I totally get it. But if you're going into a year where you are expected to make the playoffs and to put the expectations on a young player who has not even played Major League Baseball, and you want to count the 3 or 4 games that Alcantara played, fine, whatever. If you're not doing anything, you're going to trade Bellinger, and you're not going to either spend the money to add the power the team needs, or if you're not going to make a major trade that is going to significantly make the team better, which I think that's more likely still, then we got massive problems here. We have a lot of apologies to be giving Godfather if that were to play out that way. All right. So, like, I don't think that the Cubs are going, if they trade Bellinger, I don't personally think that they will do that and then just not do anything. I don't think they're that stupid. I don't think they want that PR nightmare as well. But if you're trading Bellinger just to not pay him, you won't get anything of real significance back unless you do like what Luke said, flop in salaries, bring in someone like Jordan Montgomery, who, again, will make a lot of money, but he just 2 years ago was pitching in the World Series and was awesome. So it's not far away since he was good. You get him with a full spring training. And again, I think his contract's similar to what Bellinger's is. He could probably opt out after 20. I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure. But
don't let the facts.
Yeah, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. The idea of shredding salary and then not replenishing makes me want to physically throw up or punch one of these brick walls. To go into this, last week I saw MLB Trade Rumors send a tweet saying that the Royals called about Juan Soto. The Royals! We're not even sending phone calls, brother.
Yeah, you got him worked up now.
It's absolutely unexcusable, man. It's unexcusable to be the Cubs and to not even call. I'm not even going to go down that again. I won't do that. I won't put the people through that. It's only adding on to it. All right. So again, I'm open to trading Bellinger, but like you guys said,
we're all saying the same thing. I think.
Yeah. You got to be creative about it.
Whether it's what you get in return for Bellinger or a move you make afterwards, if you're going to trade him, It can't be just to trade him, like to not have to dunk to the salary dump is what I'm saying.
And
We're all saying the same thing here. It's just
I'm worked up about it because like
didn't even happen yet.
I legitimately don't want to sit here in a year and be like, man, all those really pessimistic fans who yelled about ownership every single day in our YouTube chat, man, they were right. I really don't want to do that. No offense to you, Godfather. I know you're a diehard fan. You've been watching this organization for decades. I get it. I like to be optimistic. I want to be positive about the team, but let's just call a spade a spade. They're acting cheap right now based off what the reports are out there. That's what it is. And it makes me irrationally angry.
Or rationally angry.
Maybe
I would argue rationally angry. Yeah.
Well, to get as mad as I do about baseball or the Cubs in general, it might be irrational.
In the grand scheme of things, yes, irrational. But in the world of baseball, I think it's entirely reasonable to be frustrated because, like I said earlier, this isn't what the standard for the Chicago Cubs should be.
Right.
We shouldn't be talking about things like salary, managing their salary obligations and all that kind of stuff, especially because, like you said, it's not 2022. We're going into the 2025 season, and it's now 4 years since they traded away all the guys, the Rizzo and Brian, all that. So you've really been in, call it whatever you want, rebuild, not rebuild, but that's what's been happening since July of 2021. And when it's sort of like spinning your wheels for multiple years in a row, like I said earlier, the direction from here needs to be, we got 83 wins 2 seasons in a row. We need to turn 83 wins into 90 wins. How can we do that? What needs to happen in order to get us to that point? Because you aren't going to get a playoff spot continuing to battle right around 500. Or even if you do, you don't stand a chance against the top tier National League teams. We all watch the Dodgers and the Yankees in the World Series. And if you think the Cubs have a shot against either teams like that, they most certainly do not. So I think it's very justified. The direction the team should be taking is not the one that it appears that they are.
And I'm not one to sit here and say that, the teams that spend the most money are the ones that win. I mean, even though some recently, especially the Dodgers, have, other teams have won too by spending at a normal
intelligent
level,
spending,
intelligently, I guess, whatever. But
seeding projections.
When you're
the wind blowing out.
When you're the Cubs, though, man,
they're checking their farmer's almanac for next year.
Like what does the team have to do for Tom to be like, okay, y'all, I'm open up the book? Like they did that after 15. You get to the NLCS and they opened up the pocketbook and they went and built a World Series team. Like, are they trying to just tread along until the 10-year anniversary? Like, I think that's a fair thing to ask at this point. Like, it's really disappointing considering how much they've rebuilt the ballpark and how nice it is in the entire area. And you play in a division where you don't even have to spend like the Dodgers or the Yankees or whatever to dominate your own division.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and I've said this before. If you win the division every year, or at least you're in the playoff race every year, like making the wild card, whatever. If you're doing that every year, I wouldn't be as loud about this. But you haven't made the playoffs in a 162 game season since 2018, bro. And no one counts 2020. All right, like it's way past due for an organization that makes as much money as it does.
Yeah.
Like what do we got to do, Tom?
Buy more beer. More beer bets.
At least be the
more
Brewers.
Yeah.
Right? At least be the Brewers, but with a way bigger paycheck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that's all you want them to do is be there, get in it. Now the Brewers don't get anywhere because they don't have enough superstars to compete with the Dodgers and the big money teams either. But
the Cubs could, and
the Cubs are the one team in the division that could do it.
It could.
Do we have a super chat, by the way, earlier today that what was it? I just still want to read it. Ryan says, gonna miss future Major League Hall of Famer Nick Madrigal.
You never know. His career's not over.
It's not over.
Technically possible.
He's only 27, I think.
To close,
a lot of time.
I guess to close on the Bellinger trade stuff, PHNX Diamondbacks did a whole show on the potential of trading Montgomery for Bellinger. So if you want to hear it from a Diamondbacks perspective, go check it out. I still have not watched it. I just saw the thumbnail, and it's been stuck in my head for 3 days. So it was a show they did last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we all say I don't have a problem with moving on from Cody Bellinger and being a little disappointed that he opted in because of wanting to spend the money somewhere else. And if that means spending the money in a trade, I don't know if that works out. But is there another player out there? That's why Jed's being paid the big bucks. If you want to find somewhere else that you need that money, go ahead and find that trade for him. But right now, according to Bob Nightingale, nobody seems to be biting on the Bellinger contract because they all look at it and say, nice player, good teammate. You gave him way too much money with control in his hands.
Yeah.
And to add on,
I don't think it's the money. I think it's the control. It's
because if it's opting in.
If it's a 1-year deal, like the saying in baseball, Jared, like, is like there's no bad 1-year contracts. Like it could look bad in the moment, but like it's 1-year contract off the books. Bellinger potentially might not be, so it's not just a 1-year contract either.
But it's also not a 10-year, right? Like what Cody's saying is you're the Cubs. Why it was a 2-year bad deal or overvalued deal for Cody Bellinger sinking you? Why is a slightly overpaid Hayward sinking you for these deals shouldn't be bothering you. It shouldn't be scaring you away from Juan Soto.
No.
What? Were you really I know they weren't in on Ohtani, but like Ohtani was that his 3rd unanimous MVP in 4 years?
I think so.
And Judge also MVP. Like, you think they're worried about those contracts, those two teams? No, they're thrilled with them.
Yeah.
And we're disappointed because we're paying Cody Bellinger more than he's worth, but he's still a good player. I don't know. Seems crazy.
When fans talk about, we're paying this guy too much money, this or that, from baseball at least, like, who cares? It's not our money.
You're overpaying for a beer, but you still go to the game.
It's not our money. There's no cap.
Put that on a shirt right there.
Yeah.
Put that on a shirt.
Who cares if you're overpaying for the player? I'm overpaying for this beer.
Yeah. And I'm still happy.
And I'm still happy.
Yeah. Not complaining.
I don't know.
It seems like a lot of words. Avi's shirt says they got a good way of doing that.
I feel bad because it makes it sound like that I'm upset about Cody Bellinger being here. As many remember, like we were all aboard about bringing Cody Bellinger back. It made so much sense to bring him back.
And it still does.
Right.
It still did.
Imagine if they didn't bring him back and then they didn't do anything, or maybe they go and sign some like 1-year veteran, like some random dude, whatever. And like, I guess the only other option that would have made sense, and I don't even know if that means that they lead to winning, and we've kind of touched on this months back, or maybe like a month ago. But like, if they had signed one of the other guys, the Boris guys, if they had signed Montgomery instead, or if they had signed Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman was a 5-WAR player this year, perhaps. But I don't know if the offense is any better, considering playing at Oracle this year is probably a lot different than playing at Wrigley this year, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, you didn't want Matt Chapman, right?
No, I wanted Matt Chapman, but there's someone in our chat every day that says that I didn't, and he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Sorry, I'm just stirring things up. Number 1 troll. God tier troll.
Like, I always thought that they needed to get 2 of them, and they still only got 1. I wanted Bellinger because he's a left-handed bat, right? They don't have a lot of left-handed hitters,
too. They need
too.
left-handed power.
And like, like maybe he hits more home runs if he didn't get hit by a pitch in Baltimore, and if he doesn't run into the outfield wall this year, like, who knows? But the thing about Bellinger is that makes me frustrated sometimes. Is like, some people just really don't take in like how valuable he actually is. I know he's only a 2-WAR player this year, but versatile defensively, left-handed bat, professional hitter, great with 2 strikes, hits 300 against lefties. Like,
and the upside is higher than other
sure,
players. Like, he may not
you got
hit that.
MVP,
He might have the highest
ago.
upside of any player.
Well, the upside is tremendously high. I mean, it's still there. You look back at
is he even 30 yet?
29. He'll turn 30 in July.
There you go. So he's not even 30 yet.
So he's still young. Those first 3 seasons of his career, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah.
And I don't think I expect him to ever get back to that level of performance, but he doesn't have to. I mean, the upside on this guy is huge. And I go back to what I said earlier, a team that desperately needs some offensive production. You could change your whole lineup with Cody Bellinger hitting at all like he did in, say, 2019.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty good. Yeah.
Niren makes a good point in the live YouTube chat, which is the best way to enjoy the CHGO experience. So make sure you check it out. But I think you're right, Niren. It's like you could also hold on if you don't make this trade. If nobody bites on this now.
Yeah.
And he does also provide, in addition to being a good player and the flexibility of the game and all that stuff, he also provides you insurance for PCA and center. If all of a sudden PCA didn't figure it out and that was a mirage at the end of the season, or if Bush takes a huge step back at first and that was a mirage for a season, because one season in baseball or half a season in baseball is not a huge sample size. You can look a lot of guys and say that. Look at Kosuke Fukudome. If you would have bought on the first half of the season, you'd say, oh, he got an all-star forever. So don't Brian LaHare. If you want to just take a half a season, be careful. So he provides you with not only great flexibility for a first half of the season, and if you're in it and you want to flip him to a team that needs it, or if you're, Lord help us all, if you're in the same situation that you've been the last 2 years and you want to flip him later in the season, and maybe this time you eat some of the money, but a team says he's playing well, the Yankees need him, whoever, then that's the scenario too. It's not like dealing with a horrible player where you have this albatross of a contract. If you deal Bellinger, make sure it's the right deal.
Yeah.
I think it's that simple.
The right deal, and yeah, maybe the right time. Maybe it's a deal that makes more sense in the summer.
My biggest fear, and this probably is a little irrational, but my biggest fear is they move him and include one of your top 100 guys to bring back decent value, but the prospect you trade goes on to be good for whoever. And it was all just because you wanted to get Bellinger off the roster. You know, like
you're afraid they're going to team him up with somebody and say, "Oh,
right, like we'll
take player B, but here's one of our top prospects with him."
I don't personally think that they would actually do that, considering how much they've been hoarding prospects the last 3 years. But if you really wanted to get him off the roster that bad, to move him that quickly, you would have to include someone of high upside like that
to make that more appealing for the other team.
For another team to take his salary,
And to some degree, you hoard prospects so that you can make moves like that. So because they're not all going to come play for your major league team, and we've experienced this in the recent history with the Cubs, where you stockpile some prospects, and sometimes it does mean you flip the really good ones to try to help your team out at the major league level in some way. So I don't think it's an outlandish possibility. Don't like it either, but yeah, I think it's.
This is what I think about laying in bed. All right, like
staring at the ceiling,
thinking about like all the worst possibilities of what could happen, and it's just
spoken like a true Chicago sports.
It's so frustrating. This is supposed to be an off season that is disappointing that 24 was. This is supposed to be an off season where there's supposed to be a little bit of anticipation or excitement.
I keep saying it, stepping in a different direction.
Yeah.
And instead we're talking about potential salary dumps, and like we got people on Cubs Twitter getting upset about trading a 6th-round pick from 2023 because of high upside. Like, this is what the Cubs ownership / front office has done to us. We're getting upset about trading 6th-round draft picks for a reliever, you know, like,
or not getting something for Tauchman.
Yeah.
Wait, that was us.
That was me. Yeah. Like
that was 40 minutes ago. Yeah.
Like the best organizations, they just full send, man. Like, that's what I need this team to do. Just full send. Like, just go do what you can do that other organizations can't. That's not even just spending money. Like, you have all these prospects, make a trade. Like, what are we doing? You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jared for coming in today. You can be here Wednesday too?
Wednesday. Let's do it.
We got another special guest coming up tomorrow. Don't forget, it is the Die Hard season. When I say Die Hard season, I mean it is the time to give the gift of the year. Like, if you have someone in your family or in your life that you love, the way to tell them you love them, other than to say I love you, is to hand them a Die Hard card and a membership so that they can read all of Ryan and Jared's stuff throughout the season next year, or the off season right now as the Cubs try to build everything up. You also get the discounts on the merch. I'm not saying there could be a merch deal coming, but there could be a merch deal coming in addition to that. Okay? And we have some great merch out there. It's the tailgates on discount, right? Just had another great one, Vikings tailgate. Ryan's still recovering from some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
See, I told you. That's why he was a little mellow coming in here. A little mellow coming in this morning. Put his head down on the table. That was it. Anyways, the Die Hard is the Die Hard program is the gift that you can give to a family member or a loved one, and it's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year round. They'll finish 2025, and they'll say, the best thing that happened to me in 25 was the Die Hard program. And hopefully a Cubs win. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. We're back at 11:30 tomorrow. We may talk about a possible Nico trade then. Wait for it. See you then. Fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.